Okay. I just want to say one more thing though, before we go back to the syllabus, and I just wanted to say something about this time, not in the Jewish calendar, but this time in American Jewish life, just in reflecting on the second murderous attack on a synagogue in the last 6 months, and there were none for the first like 320 something years of Jewish life in America. There were 2 in the last 6 months, and what that signifies and what it means. And I for those of you who are preparing to go through a conversion process, one of the final moments of the conversion process is standing in the mikveh, about to immerse, and the Beit Din will ask if you accept the mitzvah upon yourself, the mitzvah you know about, the ones you might not yet know about, the mitzvah of the Torah, the mitzvah that the rabbis legislated. Do you accept all of them as binding upon yourself and accept responsibility for that? And hopefully by then you'll say yes. And the Beit Din will also ask you to understand that becoming part of the Jewish people takes on a certain amount of risk of being, even today, even in America, the target of anti-Semitism and even hatred and violence. And that's also, and the conversion candidate has to say, yes, I understand that. That's to go into, make this commitment with the full recognition that it isn't always easy, it isn't always pleasant, and that there are, that by casting one's fate with the Jewish people, one is accepting upon oneself that one will be a target of hate and prejudice and even at times violence. And that's a reality that, all the conversion that I've been part of, it sort of hasn't really been something that was felt quite real or meaningful in the same way as it has recently. So I sort of have a lot of respect for everyone who's, sort of all of you who are going through this process or thinking about it. And you should also just take with real gravity what this entails. All of us should take with gravity what it entails to live as a Jew today, and the risk that we bring ourselves and our children, and just by being in the world as a Jew. So I wanted to just share that with you in this context. Let's talk more about continuing our discussion about kosher food. Last time we did letter A and letter B of Roman numeral 4, right? We did B also. Okay, so this is all the kosher species and the non-kosher parts of kosher animals. Yes? Okay. So everything until now, you might have been able to figure out from reading the Torah yourselves. Some animals we eat, some things we don't eat, some parts of animals we can't eat. That's all from the Torah. Even the fact that animals have to be ritually slaughtered is alluded to in the Torah. You can't, which also is a big difference between kosher meat and not kosher meat as well. But the kosher kitchen, as it's come to be, is really based on an additional premise, and that premise is a little bit hard for us to understand because it's not really our reality most of the time, but it's our reality some of the time, and it used to be everyone's reality all the time. And that is that taste of things, well, one predicate and then a premise or something. The predicate is that it's called tam hikar, the taste of the thing is like the thing itself. It's not only are non-kosher foods prohibited, but the taste of non-kosher foods is also prohibited, even if there's no actuality of the non-kosher substance there in the mixture there in your food anymore. Okay? So a piece of bacon falls into your chicken soup, you remove the bacon, bacon's gone, but it kind of leaves a bacony taste in your chicken soup, it's not kosher. Tam hikar, the taste of the thing is as the thing itself. That's, yeah?
That's not true of imitation taste, right?
Correct. Good. The actual taste of the thing, not bacon flavor number 42, but like the taste of it, yeah, correct. That's a good question. So tam hikar, that's the premise, the predicate. And then the other premise then, one step further, is that tastes can be absorbed, not only in food, but can also be absorbed in pots and pans and utensils. And they can be absorbed in them, they can stay in them for a period of time, and they can be expelled into something else. So I can cook my clam chowder in my big pot, and then I feed it to my Gentile friends, and then I cook something else in that pot, and the flavor, that non-kosher flavor of the clam chowder, that it gets absorbed in the pot, and then comes out of the pot and infects the thing that I cook next in that pot. If this seems strange to you, that's because your pots and pans are probably made of stainless steel, which was invented in the last 100 years, and doesn't really do this very much, if at all. But if you use a wooden cutting board to cut an onion, and then you cut an apple on that cutting board, the apple will taste like onion. If you have a cast iron skillet, and you cook something in it, the next thing you cook in it will taste like the first thing you cooked in it, okay? The old materials, wood, cast iron, like simple, unalloyed, old-fashioned metals, did in fact absorb taste, do in fact, earthenware, do in fact absorb taste, and that taste can then go into the things that are subsequently cooked. And so all the laws of kosher kitchen are about regulating and the ways in which, observing and regulating the ways in which taste is absorbed from one thing to the next and expelled from one thing to the next. Because we're concerned that if that happens, the resulting food is not kosher. Are so good? The other thing to understand is that I know why this sounds familiar to me. It sounds familiar to me, not because I just recently talked about this a few weeks ago in the show podcast. That's why I was like, why did I feel like I'm like deja vu, like I was just talking about this. And it wasn't to you guys, it was on the podcast. Okay. So I was like, that's where these words seem very familiar. So I've heard myself talk about this recently. Keeping a kosher kitchen and the laws of kashrut, the laws of kosher food, are separate from one another in the same way as learning to drive is different from an insurance company accident report. Insurance company accident report is about this car went through the red light, veered to the left, hit this other car right behind the driver's side door, causing $500 worth of damage to okay? That's an insurance company action, which describes what happened when the two cars crashed. Learning how to drive is all about avoiding crashes, right? How do I operate this machine so that it doesn't crash into another car? When those crashes occur, and you describe the damage and the impact and what was done and the consequences, that's called an insurance company. That's a totally different genre of literature, right? Guides to how to drive safely versus here's what happens when there's a crash. The laws of kosher food are basically like the insurance company reports. If this falls into that, and this is how much it is, and this is there's the consequences, right? That's all the laws. That's what in rabbinical school we spent the better part of a year. So that's like the core of the rabbi's curriculum is these laws of things falling into other things in various quantities and ways and mixtures and so it's stirred, not stirred, it's hot, it's cold. All of these scenarios of things falling into other things and mixing with other things that shouldn't happen. Keeping kosher kitchen is about avoiding those types of accidents. You shouldn't, right? So a kosher kitchen has exclusively kosher food. Kosher kitchen, you don't have your clam chowder, like your pots and your pans, your utensils, your plates are used exclusively for kosher food. So we're not worried about taste that's absorbed being expelled to something else. When accidents happen, okay, so then you have to learn some of these rules. So what are some of the rules? The rules are taste transfers under heat. Taste does not transfer if things are cooked. So you have a non-kosher, so you have my friend's clam chowder bowl, and it's cold and clean, and I use it for some cereal with milk. That cereal with milk is totally kosher, because the clam chowder taste is not going to leave, assuming it's clean, it's not going to leave where it was absorbed in the walls of the ceramic earthenware chowder bowl and infect my Cheerios, because it's cold. But if I were to make oatmeal in that bowl and it's like by putting boiling hot water in it to make my oatmeal, then that would be a problem. Yes?
What's considered cold?
The line between hot and cold is called, there are two versions of it. One is Yadsulet, which is that you can't put your finger in. If you put your finger in it, your hand recoils. Yep. The Yerushalmi calls it Ein Hayad Sholetet Ba, which means you can't put your hand in it, versus hand does recoil. It's the same thing, just different ways of referring to it. Other places in the Talmud it's called the temperature at which a baby's belly would be burned. I had somebody who once tried to call Child Family Services to say, like, what temperature does a baby's belly burn? Trying to find out. They said, sir, like, you should never, be very careful. It's like, no, I understand. Just tell me, like, what temperature is it? Well, you should never even, and they when he realized he was really freaking them out, so he ended the call. But it's essentially we understand to be the same temperature. Okay, so if your hand in it, it's not hot. Which means that if you're doing dishes by hand without gloves, it's not yatsuledet, and there's not going to be, if you accidentally say, oh my gosh, I washed this with my that, well, you wash dishes by hand, it's not a problem because it was not so hot, not piping hot that your hand recoils. There was no transfer of taste. Stacey?
Yeah, okay, so I came home and my daughter had put a tiny little meat skillet on the parv side. But I don't know what temperature she sat it in there when she put it in there. She don't cook vegetables in it. So now I'm like, I'm not sure what to do with that skillet on my sink now.
Okay. Well, the skillet would be fine because it didn't go any place where dairy would be, right?
Right.
So the skillet is fine. If the skillet was piping hot and it was brought into contact with the sink, that would also be fine. First of all, it probably wasn't because maybe it was. Maybe if she cooked something, turned off the stove, it cooled down, and then she's doing dishes, and she puts it in the sink, it's already no longer piping hot, right, by the time she does that. Certainly she's washing dishes by hand. If she is frying things and dishes it out on the plate, and then using the hot holder because it's still steaming hot, she dumps it in the sink, then that would be an issue. But if the contact was the bottom of the skillet and the bottom of the sink, and there's no water where the two are touching, then it's also fine. There's another principle. It's called ein balua yotzei michaticha l'chaticha bli rotev, which means something absorbed in one thing can't get absorbed in something else without rotev, without a liquid medium in between. So two dry things, even if they're hot, they're in contact without any liquid in between. Something absorbed in one can't get absorbed into the other. So there's a further reason why it's okay, and that's because the meat skillet wasn't used for meat within 24 hours. And so the meat taste, we'll get to this is number F, the meat tastes that were absorbed in the skillet were old, rancid meat tastes. And this entire concept of tam ki kar, that we're worried about the taste of the thing just like the thing itself, that's only a concept that pertains to new, fresh tastes that were absorbed recently into a vessel of some kind. So there's other grounds for leniency. If your skillet was not used for meat within 24 hours, for cooking meat within 24 hours, then if it gets in contact with dairy, then it's less likelihood of it causing a kosher emergency. Because the meat taste is itself not a real meat taste, it's a rancid old meat taste.
This is a question also, like having different burners designated for meat or farm or dairy. Does it really matter what the burner is, or it's just a way to help you not use your...
Yeah, I don't think you need a separate burner. We don't have a separate burner. For that same reason, you're not eating directly on the burner. So even if let's say you're cooking some meat sauce and it bubbles over and falls on the burner, so the burner would then absorb the taste of the meat, so eventually it gets clean before it gets used again. And so you stick, even if you're, boiling mozzarella cheese, and you stick it on that same burner, so the outside of the pot is clean, the burner's clean, whatever taste might be absorbed in the burner can't get into the pot because there's no liquid medium in between them. So I don't believe it's necessary to have separate burners. If you want, I'm not saying it's a bad idea, there may be reasons why it's helpful, but I don't think it's necessary.
I'm just thinking, like when I go to my parents' house, I can't really remember where I learned it or why I learned it, but like I'll turn the burner on for a little while.
That's good. That's a good thing to do, to kasher the burner, to let it run for a while. So that's good. I'm not sure that's necessary between meat and dairy though. I think it's a good thing to do to kasher it at
Just what's the difference between?
We're a little stricter about. We're a little more lenient, let's say, with the meat. In some ways, we're more lenient with meat and dairy because they're both actually kosher, and so the thing that's absorbed is not a non-kosher taste. It's essentially a kosher taste that only becomes non-kosher once it gets to something else. Kosher meat gets absorbed in your burner, that's a kosher taste that's absorbed into it. It only becomes non-kosher if dairy subsequently is absorbed into that same place and could then contaminate your food. So we're a little more lenient with that.
But I guess, sorry for this. Like why does the burner matter anyway if there's always a pan, like I always have a kosher pan?
Yeah, so maybe it doesn't, that's a good point. Maybe it doesn't, I think
it seems like a fine practice, but...
Yeah, I'm not sure, yeah. I mean, I think once upon a time, maybe people did more cooking over the burner directly where your food might touch it. Like if you imagine like an old-fashioned...
Sure.
Like Yeah, you have like a fire in your home and you're roasting something over a spit, your fire where like then the skewers and it would be more,
Well, and doesn't like the actual flame that's burning then on the stove just end up basically koshering the stove itself?
Exactly.
because
If it's
a
on,
method of heat.
if it's on for enough time before you start cooking, in between cooking,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
It takes some amount of time for the burner to get hot enough for that to happen. Yeah. go ahead.
So I guess one of the things that confuses me a little bit is the concept of, okay, so the dishwasher being really hot. So if you put a meat spoon
Yeah.
into a cold yogurt
Yeah.
and then I rinsed off, it's cold, so there's no transfer.
Yeah.
But then I rinse it off under normal water.
Yeah. Great.
Then can that go now into my dishwasher? As long as it's washed and like I leave it, like I guess
If it's washed, why are you putting it in the dishwasher?
that's a good point. I don't know.
You wash things before you go to the dishwasher? To get them?
I
Well, you
rinse
rinse it
them.
sometimes.
Yeah.
That's nice.
But I guess like with this, you would like if I'm hand washing it, it's hot. It's not hot
Yeah.
too hot for me to do.
You shouldn't put meat. You shouldn't put meat things in your dairy dishwasher, or vice versa.
But I guess if you only I'm thinking for like my kitchen, I only have a meat dishwasher. If that happens
Yeah.
and you like let
Sure.
the spoon, I just currently I think I have the spoon just sitting there because this happened and I'm like, well, I just left it there while we were gone, and now it's old also, so there's that, and it was cold, and I rinsed it off, so like now it's totally fine to go back to normal.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you clean it, not rinse it. If you clean the spoon.
With
meaning-
soap and stuff, right?
Yeah, or, let's get it clean. In other words, if the spoon was used for the wrong gender food, while it was cold, there was nothing wrong, no harm, no foul.
Uh-huh.
And make sure that the wrong gender food is washed off it, and then it goes back to put it back in the
It's
right
just
drawer.
the part that putting in a dishwasher after you
Don't put it in the
off,
dishwasher.
that's fine.
Don't put it in the dishwasher. The other things, but you can wash
Okay.
it by hand, and then it's
Okay.
fine.
And
But
then
like,
so
eventually you will put it in the.
right, that's why I'm
you're
like, I
gonna
don't
use it with
understand.
your chicken soup.
Fine, yeah, but that's actually because you wash
Because
it.
all of these things now have happened.
Yeah, in other words, you wash it thoroughly, all the yogurt's off it, and
Right.
you put it back in the meat, and
Okay.
it's fine.
Okay.
No yogurt, no dairy taste was absorbed in the spoon when you use it with cold yogurt.
If
Like-
that's
So the only concern is the actual yogurt that's on the surface of the spoon, which you have to wash off, which you can do that in the sink.
right.
So once you wash off the actual yogurt, no yogurt was absorbed in the spoon because it was cold, and you throw it back in your meat drawer, and it's fine.
And you're
If you
saying
were to- yeah,
don't put it in the dishwasher in case the yogurt's on that, because it's a meat
Yeah.
dishwasher? That's
Yeah.
a risk, so you might as well just wash it off and wash it.
exactly, you should wash it by hand because there's yogurt on it.
But then,
If it doesn't
but if
have
there might be yogurt on it, then you can't.
no,
use
we're
it.
talking about different time,
I'm like, for some reason, it like
we're talking about different time,
mentally.
we're talking about different time periods. You wash it to get the yogurt off of it.
Uh,
Once you've done that, it's a
Then
meat
it's
spoon,
okay.
a clean meat spoon, and it can go back in your drawer with all the
okay.
others.
What if the reverse happened? This hasn't happened to me, but like, so I don't know. So if you have a dairy spoon
With hot?
with hot chicken soup,
Yeah.
then what?
So then the dairy spoon,
Uh-huh. Has
has absorbed
it's liquid. It's hot.
hot meat inside
Uh-huh.
there. So then the dairy spoon has absorbed meat and milk inside it,
Uh-huh.
and the spoon is not kosher. It has to be kosher. You have to
Okay.
put it in boiling water or something like that.
So then ben yomo or not
If the
ben
dairy
yomo.
spoon has not been used for dairy within 24 hours, then the soup is flavorful. What about the soup, right? Assuming the dairy spoon is not being used for hot dairy, because we don't do that very much, but
Yeah.
if the dairy spoon is not actually being used for piping hot yad soledet dairy
Soup's
for
okay.
24 hours, then the soup is fine. And you don't have to worry about the soup. But the
Got
spoon now
Has to
has
be
meat
kosher.
and dairy taste absorbed in it. You should kosher the spoon.
And then, but the bowl that it was in is
So it's fine because the dairy was not within 24 hours.
Okay.
If the dairy was within 24 hours, then you have to measure the volume of the spoon and make sure it's not more than 1/60th the volume of the soup, and then you're okay. Which may
And
or
then-
may not be depending on the.
After the fact, is the like non-ben yomo, does that apply also? So like say for like a week I left that spoon without being used. Now like anything that's been absorbed in it is now
But if it was used for yes.
stale, but I still have to kosher because it absorbed it, or no because it's
Yeah.
now
Yes, you still don't get that. Yes, if having absorbed, I mean that's looking like a non-kosher. If someone, your Aunt Millie gives you her silver set, it hasn't been used in years. All the non-kosher tastes are over 24 hours old. If you use that piping hot with your kosher food, not going to contaminate the kosher food. But still, there's a lichatchila, at the outset we don't use non-kosher items, we kasher them.
Okay.
Even though they can't contaminate the food, b'diavad, if you actually do use them. That's
Right.
interesting, so, we'll get there, those are good questions, we'll get there. I don't like to jump too much ahead, but that's a good point. So just one last thing on dishwasher, if you accidentally put something, well, I'll get there in a minute actually, let's just say enough for that. So absorption of taste takes place basically through piping hot heat, or things are soaking in something else for like over 24 hours, that's less common. Salting things together, it's also pickling things, that's less common, but cooking things together, piping hot contact, etc., that's how taste transfers. This is true for dairy and meat, which are forbidden to mix, as well as being true for non-kosher and kosher. I guess mixtures of dairy, meat, and milk, letter D, that's another thing you wouldn't really know from the Torah. The Torah says, you can't boil a kid in its mother's milk, and we now, the rabbis say that means you can't cook any dairy and meat together, you can't eat dairy and meat that have been cooked together, and you can't derive benefit from dairy and meat that have been cooked together by Torah law. So that's a prohibition against dairy and meat mixing, being cooked together, etc. And that follows similar rules as non-kosher things in terms of we're concerned about the absorbed taste as well as the substance itself and those contaminations. So we have dairy pots and meat pots. We don't cook meat and dairy in the same pot because the taste that gets absorbed of the meat or of the dairy in the walls of the pot could then contaminate food that's subsequently cooked in that pot. Number E, we don't eat bugs. Bugs, there's an extra strictness about bugs because normally, another rule about absorption of taste, we understand that no taste can be perceived if it's less than, or most tastes are not perceived, if they're less than 1 in 60 volume. So a little bit of something falls into something else, and just the taste, you worry about the taste that's in there, if the taste is less than 1/60th, it's not going to have the power to contaminate the mixture it falls into. So that's another assumption. That assumption is not true, however, for an insect that is intact. An intact creature contaminates and renders non-kosher any volume whatsoever. Okay? So if a little piece of bacon falls into your big pot of chicken soup, try to remove it if you can, it melts away, it's fine. It's less than 1/60th the volume, its taste is not going to be apparent, it's melted, it's not there anymore, the taste is not, there's no taste because it's less than 1/60th the volume of the soup. If an ant falls into your chicken soup, then you have a problem because an ant is a very shlema, it's an intact organism, and therefore it is not subject to that rule of nullification. So that's why it's extra important to remove insects from, let's say, vegetables and fruit, to wash them extra carefully because a little tiny little fly in your broccoli is not going to be nullified if it's intact.
And the nullification rule only applies if it happens by accident.
Yes, you
Like I
can
can't
intention.
on purpose put a teeny tiny piece of bacon in my big
Yeah.
bowl. of
That's
soup.
called bittul isur l'chachil, you cannot do that.
I thought there was something with the 1/60th rule too, that like, if you can still taste it, it's a problem.
Sure, like spices or something that are particularly tasty, like which are very potent, and they put them in very small quantities, but they are apparent. But most things are not like that. Yeah. That's bugs. Okay, so F, let's sort of say this. As has been alluded to by several of us,
Sorry.
this concern of time hikar, the taste of the thing is as the thing itself, is, and that we're concerned about taste being absorbed and then being expelled into other foods, etc. This only applies to a positive taste, an enhancing taste. The taste that makes something taste worse is not a kosher problem. So that could be contextual, like bacon in your rice tastes good, bacon in your ice cream tastes bad, maybe. So even if it's perceptible, but it's perceptible in a way that makes it taste less good, then it would not be a kosher problem.
Is it subjective?
It is, I believe it's sort of based on what I don't recall, this is discussed in the Shulchan Aruch, I believe it's based on what most people would feel. So in the Shulchan Aruch, the Talmud and the Shulchan Aruch discuss field mice, which taste good, and city mice, which taste bad. And if you find a field mouse in your stew or in your beer barrel, whatever, then it's a problem because it makes it taste good. If you find a city mouse in your whatever, it's a problem because it tastes really yucky. This was a thing. Medieval London, they used to throw people in prison for selling city mice, claiming they were field mice.
Mm.
So, that's it. But leaving that aside, this is mostly common when it comes to this principle is most relevant in the application of the fact that tastes that have been absorbed inside pots and pans and utensils for more than 24 hours become rancid and then impart a bad flavor. And so your Aunt Millie cooks you some pasta in her big non-kosher chowder pot. The pasta is actually kosher because the chowder pot had not been used for 24 hours. The chowdery taste absorbed in the pot became rancid, and whatever chowder taste may have gone into the pasta that she cooked is rancid and can't contaminate the pasta. If you accidentally use the wrong spatula or the wrong that hasn't used 24 hours for the other gender, then it's not going to create a problem. Now, lichatchila, you're not allowed to use that chowder pot. You can't use non-kosher pots. B'diavad, after the fact, once it's cooked, the food is kosher.
So by accident, you didn't know she used it. But if you
Yeah,
see her
or-
cooking it and you're like, that's the clam chowder pot.
I don't know, I think lichatchila means it's too late to be done the right way. So once she cooks it, it's probably fine.
So then, like, if you go to someone's house who doesn't keep full kosher, but they use kosher meat, or if they're doing something that's
If all the
kosher,
ingredients are kosher and the only thing non-kosher is the pots that were used, it's not allowed for a Jew to use these utensils. So once the food is cooked, b'diavad, it's permissible to eat it. The food is kosher. B'diavad, after it's been cooked, but it's forbidden to cook. It's a rabbinic restriction, not allowed to use. Now, it should also be pointed out that this is assuming that it hasn't been used for 24 hours, which is a fair assumption
yeah,
in a private home, unless you know for sure otherwise. That's not a fair assumption for a restaurant. A restaurant is constantly making things. So even a plain pasta with no sauce or a boiled egg or something in a treif restaurant is probably 100% non-kosher, even b'diavad, because the pot they used was certainly used within 24 hours.
yeah.
But in a private home, most things are probably not used within 24 hours, and certainly in your own home, if you, again, accidentally use the wrong spatula and the wrong, skillet for this or that, unless you know for sure, we can assume it wasn't used for 24 hours, and whatever taste is absorbed is rancid. It doesn't render non-kosher the things that were cooked in that way.
At what point?
One more thing. When evaluating if the taste is rancid or not, and therefore renders something non-kosher, or the taste is positive, who says it's objective, we also look at the entire system. So you have 3 or 4 ingredients, and in combination, it's a rancid taste, then we're not worried about the contamination. So for example, you have soap, which tastes rancid, mixed in with your meat skillet that's in
Because
your
you
dairy
washed it?
sink. What?
The soap is because you washed it?
Yeah, for example, right? Then the soap is going to make all of the taste rancid, and there's not going to be any kosher concerns of taste being absorbed. So if you make a mistake doing the dishes by washing something in the wrong way with the wrong things, first of all, if you're washing by hand, it's not going to be a problem because it's not hot enough if you're washing by hand. By definition, if you're washing by hand, except some people, their sinks have the boiler turn really, really hot, and you have to wash from the side because you actually can't get it. So that would be a problem. But I think the plumbers have cracked down. It's not so safe. They don't really let people do that anymore. If you're washing by hand, it's not so hot that it's going to be a kosher problem. And even if it was, if there's soap in the mix, it's not going to be so hot as it is. Which means if the wrong fork goes into your dishwasher, and you put soap in the dishwasher, and you run it, and you open the dishwasher, oh my gosh, it's a dairy fork in my fleshy dishwasher, it's fine. Because even if there was dairy clinging to that fork when it went into the dishwasher, as everything was being mixed together with piping hot water in that dishwasher, there was also soap mixed in. And so all the taste became rancid. And so whatever dairy was touched by the soap and mixed with the soap, rancid taste, and if it came into contact then, even in piping hot water, with your meat things in that same dishwasher, it's not going to be a problem. Which is why, as a good general practice, you should always put a little extra soap in your dishwasher. You put the soap in a little container. I always sprinkle a little bit of extra around. So as soon as the dishwasher begins to run, I know there's soap in that system being mixed in as well. And so just in case I accidentally, the wrong fork gets in there, it's not going to be a problem after the fact. But yeah, but it's going to be fine. Okay, questions, comments, concerns?
I have a question,
Yeah.
going back to so you recommend to people converting to buy their own pots
Sure.
when they're cooking at their house if they're
Of course.
parents. But the question is, the pot, theoretically, they couldn't use it if it was not used 24 hours because there's a prohibition against that. But their parents could cook them a meal that was kosher.
Yeah, I mean,
Give it in 24 hours,
it's sort of
like,
hard to get,
theoretically, but
it's
is the
not
intent
so
the issue?
simple. What's l'chachila? What's l'chachila? It's forbidden to use a non-kosher pot. B'diavad, food that's cooked in non-kosher pots are kosher as long as the pot had not been used within 24 hours for something non-kosher. So how that applies in your life, that's like a little more complicated to like work it out. It may be simpler just to avoid. I mean, I think, you know, like if you yourself can't use the pot, like, you know, but it's, you know, once upon a time, people didn't travel for pleasure. People only traveled because they really had to. It was dangerous and very unpleasant, and nobody traveled for pleasure. And in such situations, Jews would go to inns, and they would spend the night at the inn, and they would give you a pot to cook your dinner in. And the pot was not kosher, right? Because, you know, and that's video, but that's like I'm not at home, I'm not traveling, so I can cook my kosher ingredients in a pot that isn't necessarily kosher. That's also video because I don't have any other options. It's too late for me to do this in an optimal way because I have no other option to feed myself. Does that mean that when, like, every Sunday you go to brunch with your non-Jewish friends and they cook you eggs that you should eat a lot? I don't know, maybe that seems a little bit less, you know, b'diavad, right?
Mhm.
But the fact remains, in fact, once it's cooked and it's too late to cook that egg in a kosher pot, it's too late to cook the pasta in a kosher pot because it's already been cooked, then if the pot had not been used within 24 hours and not kosher, the pasta, whatever, is kosher.
What about the relation, not to get out of, what about the concept of bishul,
Mishal Akum, yeah, if the person is not Jewish, then you can't eat it anyway. That's a good point.
so that's the problem.
That's a problem.
Unless you're involved in the process.
Yeah, or the person's Jewish.
Or they're Jewish.
Yeah.
And it's just an unkosher
Yeah.
pots.
Okay. Kathleen, you had a question? And then we'll go around. Wait, Kathleen, you had a question and then...
Oh, how does that work, like, I guess nowadays with things like a vegan? Like, you know,
Restaurant.
just thinking of like if a vegan restaurant has no meat, no dairy, nothing that is considered, like fruits and vegetables are,
So the vegan restaurant, they might not be as careful as we are with cleaning their vegetables for insects.
Okay.
They haven't been trained in how we are careful about that. Vegan restaurant might have vinegars and wines that they use as ingredients, which is serious kosher concerns. And the vegan restaurant might have a concern of bishul akum, of food. Jews shouldn't eat food that have been entirely, fully cooked by Gentiles. So there are some kosher concerns with even with vegan restaurants that need to be looked into. But it's easier to certify a vegan restaurant, but it still needs certification for those reasons. Stacey?
Okay, so two things. So I am a vegan, and so
Okay.
sometimes I've gone to vegan restaurants that have a kashrut, but it's not orthodox. There's one in New York.
There are a lot of those. I would not recommend that. I think, you know, I can't speak to what the standards are of the I think it's,
Okay.
I think if it requires kosher supervision, it needs good kosher supervision. I think on here we have a discussion of what it means for, should we maybe not, we take it off? Oh, look at that, sorry, the pages are in the wrong order, I apologize for that.
Oh, yeah.
What is reliable? So eventually we'll discuss what it means to have a good hechsher versus a bad hechsher. There are several different ways it could be a bad hechsher, or several different things it needs to be a good hechsher, several different ways it could be bad. You can have honest people with a lot of integrity who just have different religious standards than we do, than I do, or whatever you might. You could have people who are honest but incompetent, and you could have people who are dishonest. And all three of those options are out there in the world, and so you have to be careful for all of them. So I would say, I think if you feel that the restaurant requires kosher supervision, then it should require the same kosher. You shouldn't trust in it. You know the same kosher supervision that you would want for anything else.
And then the other one is that, okay, so I have a microwave, and I have the little covers
Yep.
on them, and one
Yep.
says meat,
Yep.
and one's like blue.
Yeah.
So what if one kid goes in and they heat up their something, and then the next kid, because one kid's a vegan, one kid eats meat, and then they go and heat it up, and either they forget to put the red cover
Yeah.
on, or they do put the red cover on, and it's gotten hot and steamy in there.
Yeah, we'll talk about microwaves. We'll talk about microwaves.
Oh.
Let's hold off on that. That's also its own item. Microwaves are kind of interesting because they don't. the microwave itself doesn't get hot. It doesn't generate heat. It's a very different kind of cooking. The microwave, like an oven, there's heat that the oven generates that then radiates into the food. The microwave, the oven just sends out microwaves, right, that agitate the molecules in the food that then create the heat, which then comes out. But you could have your piping hot thing in the microwave, and first of all, other parts of the plate might be cool to the touch, and the walls of the microwave are cool. So you're concerned with the covers, like splattering things from like bubbling food, then it splatters on the wall, but the walls are actually cold. And if they get warm, it's only a derivative from the steam from the food, warming the microwave, not actual like heat from the microwave. So microwaves are a little more lenient for that reason.
But can steam be considered like piping hot? Or?
Steam is, but the steam is in food, right? It's just steam, so it's a little bit different.
So the
I
meat
thought
steam,
this-
dairy
yeah.
steam is not differentiated?
Not, maybe, but not in the same way, it's just steam.
Mhm.
I think we've kind of gotten to my question.
Okay. Okay, anything else? I think maybe we'll pause here unless, one more thing. So I think, so within F, we talked about F, 1 and 2, just say, again, if everything in your kitchen is stainless steel, none of this makes sense because this doesn't really happen. With cast iron it does happen, with wood it happens, you can experience this today. Rabbi Melamed and some others in Israel have said, actually, yeah, stainless steel doesn't absorb anything, doesn't expel anything. It's like, that's the miracle of stainless steel. None of these kasha concerns, you don't have to be, just one, if you have stainless steel pots and pans, utensils, you can absorb anything. No concerns whatsoever, because stainless steel, in fact, does not absorb taste and doesn't expel taste. That's what's kind of cool about stainless steel. It's one of these miracle, products. Nonetheless, no one does that. But Rabbi Melamed says, well, it's like an added, sneak hakel, because you try to keep kosher in the conventional way as we've done for generations. But if you have a problem and you make a mistake, you say, well, actually, at the end of the day, let's try to resolve the problem. But stainless steel is actually okay, because stainless steel does not absorb anything. That's kind of cool about stainless steel. So just point that out. But with other things, this is still observable, and the practice is to treat even stainless steel as though it were an old-fashioned metal as well. Why have one pot and wait 24 hours between dairy and meat? Why do I have it? Yeah, because l'chachila we're not supposed to have the taste absorbed in the pot. Like the food would be kosher, the pot would not be. The pot would be absorbing dairy and meat in the same pot, even though the food would be kosher because we're waiting 24 hours. And we're not supposed to cook with non-kosher pots and pans. Okay, we'll pause here for now. Let's see if we can get a next class on the schedule. I think I can do Monday, May 20th at, I think, what time is Mincha? That's on my calendar. Let's say Monday the 20th at 7, so we'll finish time Mincha, okay?
Wait, sorry, what was it?
May 20th.
May 20th.
At
So,
7?
Yeah.
Okay.
But just look to see this confirmed on the website or in the bulletin, because if I may be missing something that I have to. Okay. Great. Cool.
So,
All right. Take care, guys.
Thank
Have a great
you.
week.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Do you want the paperback? We definitely have one.
You can,
Never use.
sure. See you soon.
Thank you.